Sometimes in this early access and just in Warhammer in general, you take things that you know aren't necessarily optimal. Number one, to try them out, to see exactly how unoptimal they are, and number two, it's just for fun. So today we're under the banner of Lyonesse, what is it? Chevaliers de Lyonesse, whatever it is. It's Reponse, guys. It's Reponse. No Henri. We've just got a regular paladin because we're facing off against Nurgle, who doesn't have a whole lot of armor for the time being, although with that soul grinder across the field from me, probably going to wish that I actually had brought good old Henri for his armor piercing melee damage. Anyway, the builds here, of course, Reponse the paladin. We've got GRAIL Guardians and Companions of Quenelle for a couple of elite melee grind cavalry to help not burst down, but grind Nurgle down. Definitely no burst. Burst comes from the Pegasus Knights. Got a front line of spear men-at-arms here, some men-at-arms with pole arms, also Holy Wardens of La Maisenthal. The Yeoman Archers, as you saw in the beginning, including the Wardens of Montfort Regiment of Renown. For my opponent, he's got a Herald on the Palanquin. Pretty good choice against the Cavalry faction. 80 armor here, magical poison damage, obviously, armor piercing, a couple of rot flies up in the air, the Soul Grinder. 3 Exalted Plague Bears, which is quite a bit, including the Festering Stooges, 1 regular Plague Bear, some Nurglings up front, and some of those Death's Heads of the Exalted Plague Bears already been tossed to break my Wardens of Montfort. It happened very quickly before I could even react. My own sloppy micro perhaps coming back to haunt me. Oh yeah, 1 Poison Warhound also in the back comes in and just immediately eats those Blessed Field Trebuchets, so they are not at all going to be a factor in this battlefield. The full unit was in fact just completely shattered. That's going to set me back right off the bat on value, losing those 2 units, not outright. Holy Wardens, the Wardens of Montfort. Holy Wardens are over here. Lots of Wardens of Bretonnia. They'll still be able to provide a little bit of poison effect, but their damage has been severely nerfed. This I'm actually okay with. The Death's Heads throwing at like these 250 cost Spearmen at Arms or these 100 cost Peasant Mobs is pretty ideal for me. Basically, as long as they're not throwing at my expensive cavalry, I'm happy. The Plague Mortar, though, is landing on the Companions of Quenelle, so I've got to get a move on. Probably should have been advancing this whole time, but going to start to get the infantry and cavalry into position here. The Yeoman Archers kind of coming up and around here. Pegasus Knights also looking to get an engagement, perhaps with the support of the Yeoman Archers, into the Rotflies here. Rotflies don't have a whole lot of armor, so they should take a lot of damage from the Pegasus Knights and the ranged fire of those mobile bows. Cavalry sweeping up and around the flank. Nice Stream of Corruption there. I think they did confirm they're going to nerf the damage on Stream of Corruption because it is pretty insane for how little it costs right now. Just absolutely routes and one-shots almost unit men-at-arms. Definitely routes them. The Rotflies are going to land with the Soul Grinder and with the Nurgle Herald nearby, mostly to avoid a bad air engagement against the Pegasus Knights, but I honestly think 2v1, they could probably beat the Pegasus Knights. Instead, they're going to take an engagement on the ground where my own ground cavalry can flank and get back into this position here. Here come the GRAIL Guardians charging straight into the foul Rotflies. A couple of Death's Heads flying in the distance, but not really enough left to do that much damage. They're doing a fairly solid amount of damage, I should say, but yeah, the GRAIL Guardians and the Companions definitely have taken a beating, but the GRAIL Guardians should be able to get plenty of healing and hold out. Both units of Rotflies just take severe damage and start to go down. The Holy Wardens blend through some Nurglings in a big hurry, and then I immediately forget about them. Would have been nice to have them supporting this backline engagement the whole time. Likewise, the Beast Slayers of Bastogne out of position, fighting Exalted Plague Bears, which is definitely not what they're meant for. Not that Nurgle had a lot of large stuff here, but it would have been nice, certainly, to have those halberds against this Soul Grinder in the back, which is now going to eat a nice fleshy abundance. Yeah, the Pegasus Knights just trying to finish off the Rotflies. I think I even dump a regrowth into them at this point. I believe. Maybe not quite yet, but yeah, that Stream of Corruption just doing an insane amount of damage is definitely causing me problems. And somehow I flanked around, got into the expensive backline of Nurgle, and have now become fully surrounded by Plague Bearers. So the GRAIL Guardians, Companions of Quenelle, Reponse, and the Paladin are going to have to form up a little circle here and fight from all directions. Pegasus Knights are going to do their best to assist. These Yeoman Archers used up all their ammunitions. They can come in here, get a nice rear charge. Holy Wardens also made their way over now and are supporting. So Kind of the double envelopment, both of us getting some pretty good engagements, but I am taking a significant amount of damage, and right now is when I was really kicking myself for taking Response, because obviously with the Fey Enchantress, I'd be getting a huge amount of just constant AoE drain damage, which is going to be insanely strong in a huge blob fight like this. Likewise, these Pegasus Knights hanging out up in the air, really, I probably should go charge out these Nurglings to try and free up my lower tier infantry to come in and support, because with just more bodies, I mean, it's not like Exalted Plague Bears have that great of offensive stats. 39 melee attacks, pretty good. I mean, only 30 melee defensive Spearmen at Arms, but even still, in a nice surround, you know, just to help affect leadership and whatnot would be pretty good. But let's get in close. Watch as the Knights and the Men-at-Arms fight against the foul forces of Nurgle, slowly grinding down each other to bile and blood and dust. Very much thematic. We're on one of the new Bretonnian maps. I believe this one's called Tournament Grounds. And there's Response versus the Herald himself. Response, interesting colors on the horse there. I didn't realize that her horse would actually change coloration with the faction. That's actually pretty cool. And of course, the Herald is going to be pretty tough to actually get a hold of. His mass on the palanquin is pretty decent. And looks like, unfortunately, the Companions of Quennel couldn't continue to fight there. They are going to rout away. Pegasus Knights also getting terrified. As soon as the terror kicks in for the Festering Stooges, maybe they were terrified by the Soul Grinder anyway, but yeah, I'm just having major leadership issues with my army right now. Of course, Men-at-Arms are going to be tricky into demons just like they're tricky into undead because they don't have a lot of leadership, and all demons cause fear, I believe. Let's double-check that. Even the Nurglings should... yes, cause fear. So it's a very similar problem to Undead. It's also going to be a problem for factions like Greenskins, Beastmen, potentially. Any faction that has relatively low leadership on their infantry could have a bit of a problem with demons. Skaven, maybe. I mean, the nice thing about Skaven is you can just keep summoning more infantry if yours run away, as long as your summoner's still alive. Anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Again, I'm kind of kicking myself for misusing these Pegasus Knights. Definitely would have been nice to go swing out and just disrupt and like break these Nurglings, be able to get my own infantry in a better supporting position. But even as it is, these Grail Guardians are holding out quite well. Their armor, 120 armor, and lack of armor piercing damage in general from Nurgle here, not to mention 71 melee defense with Response's buffs here, that Fleur-de-Lis banner, and 10% spell resistance. Not that it matters a ton. You can see the entire replay. They've still been taking significant damage from Stream of Corruption, but once that gets nerfed, obviously it would help. It would help also if there was like, you know, a big Kugath or something that had the Mortis Drain effect. I would say taking Kugath is probably very risky just because of Peasant Archers in this matchup, especially in land battles. But here, with the Palanquin Death Blob of just tons and tons of Exalted Plague Bearers, has been quite potent. Grail Guardians, though, we'll check their value after the fact. They are performing insanely well, just tanking out all the damage. Companions of Quennel got back in here, too. Kind of wish I had just brought 2 Grail Guardians, to be honest, because the Companions, that extra little bit of defensive stats would have helped them hang around for that much longer, and you don't really need the AP. I mean, the anti-large is nice, the AP anti-large is nice, but they haven't actually been able to get on the Soul Grinder, which is where they need to be. We do manage to get the Herald in a little bit of a surround here with the Paladin and with Response, but of course he can just cast Fleshy Abundance on himself and heal himself right back up to strength. So a tough situation to be in there. Almost got the Soul Grinder down. A lot of the Exalted Plague Bearers are also struggling. The Holy Wardens of La Maison Tala probably got some pretty good value. Actually haven't quite paid for themselves, I believe. I'd need to double check, but with my caster getting routed off, it's going to make it a lot harder to trade in this attrition game. I think I still had a little bit of Winds of Magic left, maybe a couple more Earth Bloods. But let's see, the Holy Wardens, their hammers and swords, continuing to fight tooth and nail. Just absolute scrap. Another rear charge here from the Yeoman Archers. The Grail Guardians here, the Wardens of Montfort finally getting into melee combat. Will it be enough is the question. My caster also comes back. Companions of Quennel also come back. A lot of these low leadership units, though, I mean, they're coming back. They're just going to rout almost immediately away once they get into combat, though, especially because the terror of the Soul Grinder and of the Festering Stooges is still fully operational. Now Response gets a few nasty hits from the Herald himself. She's not really attacking back. Not really sure what's going on with the targeting priority there. She's just kind of fighting, like, whatever random infantry rather than him. Maybe those attacks are actually going into him, but a little bit of bad RNG basically spells doom for me, as Rapunzel takes a couple of successive hits. I mean, 67 melee defense versus 45 attack. It seems unlikely that she would take multiple hits in a row. It's a pretty low statistical likelihood of that happening, but hey, it still can happen. All it takes is a couple hits from that armor-piercing weapon strength. She's going to get terrified away, and it quickly pops army losses. So, yeah, again, I think probably, given that it was actually relatively close, other than a few power units, you know, me misusing my Pegasus Knights, definitely just swinging them out in a more mobile situation, finishing off these 2 Nurglings, and helping my other infantry come in and support, maybe I would have won. It's pretty unlikely, though. I think, in general, the Fanchantress is definitely the way to go against a blob-centric faction like this, and I knew that while I was picking my army. Again, I kind of just did this to have fun, but certainly Ponce's support on the Grail Guardians did tell. 2,795 damage dealt as gold value, 24, almost 25,000 total damage dealt. Absolutely insane. The Companions of Cornell, unfortunately, on the other hand, struggled. They did a pretty good job, but weren't quite able to pay for themselves. Same thing with these Pegasus Knights, like close but no cigar. Not quite where you would want it, especially given the feeling of Nurgle. You'd almost expect a little bit of overinflated values in some situations, but a lot of my power units just struggled. You know, the Blessed Field Trebuchet did absolutely nothing. These Slayers of Bastogne didn't pay for themselves. Holy Wardens didn't pay for themselves. So in hindsight, I would definitely change up the composition. Maybe even take more Yeoman Archers, all things considered. They did a pretty decent job providing some ranged damage. You know, low leadership Bretonnian infantry, I don't really expect them to do a lot, but that definitely feel that low leadership, absolutely. And keep in mind, this is also Nurgle without their new DLC units. They're very likely, I should say, to get units from the upcoming DLC. So keep that in mind as well. This is just against their base roster, which even then, I mean, the ranged attack plus the high HP and the high mass of the Exalted Plague Bears does make them a pretty scary unit for Bretonnia to have to deal with. Don't shock easily. Like, it's hard to just deal, like, really strong shock damage to them. So, kind of a nightmare for Bretonnia. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.